Alright, we're back. So, I'm going to pick up where I left off in the last video with those Major League Baseball win totals and the frequency distribution that we had set up there. So, if you copied it down or you've got the other video paused with the distribution sitting there, that's fine. So, I wanted to visualize this as a histogram just so you can see exactly how the process looks a little bit different if you're dealing with grouped data rather than just having individual, numbers like we saw with those NFL totals. Okay, so you'll notice I put this little kind of break right here. That's, that little jagged EKG pulse thing is just showing there's some separation between, where you're actually drawing your rectangles and the vertical axis. Don't stress if you forget to do that. Our text does it a time or two, and I just want to make sure you know what's going on when you see it. So when I set up my win totals, instead of having single tick marks for each category, the way our text does this is as follows. So you'll notice it essentially gives each of the endpoints of each of those groups, intervals, classes, whatever the heck you want to call them, in here. So some textbooks will have you find the midpoint of each of these things and center them up, kind of like we did before. That can get kind of complicated. I think it's cleaner if you just sort of have the goalpost for each bracket. Again, I think I've used yet another word. You get the idea. All right. So now I'm going to run rectangles up basically over what's in each group here. So I'll scale my frequency the same way I did before. I'm not going to try to write this all smooth from across the board. Okay, so skipping by twos again here. If you wanted to be more granular, that's okay. But all right, so the 47 to it was technically 47 to 59 because remember 60 win teams were actually in this window, but that's okay. We only had two, so that runs up right there, and yeah, so 60 to 73. Well, yeah, it was 72. Like I said, you get the idea. Went up 6 teams, so try to make sure at the height right on that. Like I said, these are sketches. When I have you do them, it's okay. Like I said, if you were wanting real precision, you'd use Microsoft Excel or something to generate one of these. So the next group we had 9 teams, so that's going to be halfway between 8 and 10. Run that guy up right there. 86 to 99. That would have gone all the way up to 10. So try to make sure I've got that accurate. All right. And then in that tiny bracket at the very end, we only had 3 teams that had 100 or more wins, essentially. So halfway between 2 and 4. That looks good. Maybe not quite as high as I need it to be. It's kind of tough to tell. Yeah, you get the idea. So this doesn't have quite the same, peak and then drop off. It's a lot more jagged, I think, than what we saw with the NFL data. So anyway, so that's grouped histograms. We've actually already covered just about everything I really want to take a look at in this section, but I do want to consider another example and then talk about sort of an alternate way of visualizing data when you're breaking it up into groups. Let me go ahead and clear this histogram off. Well, for what it's worth, before I do that, there's an example file, like a PDF posted in Moodle that actually points out the ages of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence. What I'd like for you to do is go ahead and set up a frequency distribution for each of, as I say, for all of that. So I want you to take a crack at that yourself. Normally I would pause and give you class time. Here I ask you to press pause on the video and then work it out. I'll show you my setup, and then we'll talk about this other visualization method in just a sec. All right, so I've gone ahead and kind of set up the chart for us, and then we can kind of go to town on it. So first order of business, we're told we want to have 6 groups for our data. Unlike the win totals, these have been conveniently sorted from low to high, so that'll make it a little easier for counting if that was something that gave you trouble in the last couple of data sets. So it says that we're going to use an interval running from 24 to 72. You'll notice neither 24 nor 72 is actually one of the values in question. We'll often do that so you don't have to worry about the whole rounding thing. We've often picked those values specifically so you don't need to worry about rounding up or whatever. So in this instance, we want to use 6 groups, and we're told to run from 24 to 72. So we have 72 minus 24. That should give us 48 if we work that out. divide that by 6, that gives us 8, and we don't need to worry about rounding. All right, so I'd already set up my little inequality framework here, so again, remember, we just sort of iteratively add by how wide these brackets are supposed to be. So 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, and then we've got, what, 64. I nearly messed up my arithmetic there. I was like, what have I done wrong? So then this kind of just scales us back. All right, so that way we've got the goalposts as we wanted them. We're starting from 24 and ending at 72. All right, as I look through the chart, again, this table is a little easier to sort out because the numbers are already in order. So we want people from 24 up to 31. A 32-year-old, remember, would actually be in the second bracket. So I saw 5 people there. 14 in the next group. 18, 9, 7, and 3. So feel free to check me on that. Don't just take it for granted. But if we add these up, we should get 56, which is the number of signatures on the declaration. I do have this category for a relative frequency. I did want to go ahead and calculate that. Again, remember to get that, we would divide each of these numbers by the total number of values we had, which was 56. I'm having to do a little rounding here because most of these don't cut off neatly. 14 does, oddly enough. But so again, each of these is just this number divided by 56. So let's see, 0.161. This one actually did cut off because 56 is 7 times 8. So we got those, and then down at the bottom. So again, remember, if these should add up to your total frequency, your relative frequencies, if you didn't round, should add up to 1, sort of like the percentages should add up to 100. If you had to round, you may be a little higher, a little low, depending on sort of the quirks of the data set, but you should still be somewhere in the ballpark, like 1.01 or 0.99 or something like that. Not, if you end up with like 0.95 or 1.13, something's going wrong. All right, so we've got a frequency distribution. We have the corresponding relative frequencies. Okay, so you can build a histogram with this if you'd like. There's nothing wrong with that. Feel free to take a crack at it. However, in this instance, you may decide you want to categorize the data a bit differently, so I wanted to go ahead and mention the other means of grouping data that we talked about in this section. I like to visualize these particular data values using a pie chart instead of a histogram. Like I said, the histogram's applicable, but the pie chart, or what you might call a circle graph, pie charts are kind of the standard nomenclature. So I'm sure we've all seen pie charts before, so I'm not going to belabor the construction and whatnot. The idea is that the size of a particular category section, sector, if you want to call it a wedge, if you're like a Trivial Pursuit fan, is proportional to however many data values live in there. So, like in this instance, this particular section of the pie chart would be 25%, so it's like a quarter of the circle, that kind of thing. If you were trying to draw one of these by hand, what you could essentially do is like measure out like the central angle for each section by multiplying each of these guys by 360 degrees. If you wanted to go that route, you could, but unless you've got a protractor sitting around, it's probably not something you would do. I generally wouldn't try to generate a pie chart by hand. It's usually better handled by something like Microsoft Excel. I have generated a pie chart for these data values, and I used Excel to get it, and I just kind of pasted it into the PowerPoint slides. So again, just keep in mind the big thing I want you to get out of that is, pie chart sector size is proportional to, relative frequency of that particular data category. So that's really kind of what we got in terms of grouping data. So we'll start trying to talk about actually trying to say something about the data rather than just coming up with a neat way of organizing it in our next video and I guess our next section of course materials.